Okay, great. Let's get started. I appreciate all of you who are on this webinar today. This is Dave Lavinsky, and today I'm really excited to have Michael Hellickson present this webinar to us today. I was introduced to Michael through a colleague that I really respect, who's been helping entrepreneurs grow businesses for many years, and she told me about what Michael's doing, and it dovetails really nicely on a lot of things that I've been doing and hearing about in terms of starting and growing businesses, and mainly how incredibly important it is these days to have a virtual assistant, to have outsourced staffing, because you need virtual assistants and outsourced staffing to get a competitive advantage in today's marketplace, because it allows you to get more done more quickly at a much lower cost than having full-time employees. And so so that's why I think it's just absolutely critical to understand what Michael's doing and to learn from him and figure out how you can employ this in your business. Now, Michael is just not somebody off the street. Not only was he introduced to me, but Michael has an extremely impressive career. He began his career as a real estate agent in 1991, and he eventually became literally the nation's #1 real estate agent, which is pretty impressive, and it tells a lot about Michael and how he is so dedicated to becoming the best in his field, literally the #1 agent nationwide. During his career, he's spoken to and coached thousands of students and thousands of organizations nationwide. He's been featured on several national television radio programs, including Glenn Beck, CNBC, The Dave Ramsey Show, Fox Business Network, among many others. He also is the founder and president, as he's going to talk about today, of Virtual Assistant Staffing, which is the world's leading headhunting agency which specializes in helping businesses find, hire, and train top talent from around the globe, importantly at a savings of up to 67% over local employees. Michael is also the owner of Bestseller Leads, which is a company that delivers highly motivated seller leads to real estate agents and investors nationwide on a daily basis. So Michael really knows the realty space and the real estate space, but he also can help all entrepreneurs and all business owners. So with that, Michael, first off, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to everyone in my community, in the growth community today, and to teach them about virtual assistant staffing and outsourcing.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me. And it's an impressive group. I was when I came to my office today, I thought, yeah, we're going to have 100 or so folks on the webinar. And I looked at the numbers for the webinar, and it was incredible. It was far above that. I mean, it was just incredible how many people registered and how many people have shown up. So thank you all very much for taking the time to be here. I want you to know that Dave and I both respect your time tremendously, and we're going to bring a lot of value to the hour. This is not, by the way, going to be a big sales pitch on, hey, you need to come work with my company or anything like that. I'm going to educate you on what has happened in my life with regards to virtual assistants, how I came to use them, why I've decided that they bring tremendous value for my business. And I'm going to give you some tips and things that you can do to save money in your business and to take your business to that next level using virtual assistants as well. So we are going to have a lot of content today. You're going to want to have a pen and a piece of paper in order to take notes, because we're going to go very fast through the information. I will, as mentioned, make the PowerPoint presentation available to you after the fact, but you're still going to want to take great notes, because we're going to talk a lot about things that are not necessarily entirely covered on each slide. So without any further ado, let's get moving forward and talk about what is a virtual assistant. A virtual assistant is anyone who performs work for you from a location other than your own. So this could be somebody that's doing some work for you from across the street, or from across the city, or from across the country, or even across the world. The key is that they're not coming to your physical office to do that work. And I know we have people from all kinds of different professions on the line with us today. We have people that have brick and mortar businesses. We have people that have network marketing businesses. We've got people in the real estate industry. We've got people from all kinds of different industries. And I'm here to tell you that virtual assistants can be used in virtually any business to help you reduce overhead and make more money once you fully understand how to use them. All right, so here's what I'm about to show you. I'm going to show you why top businesses hire virtual assistants, and more importantly, why you should too. I'm going to show you how to change your perception of virtual assistants forever. Now, what I mean by this is a lot of people have this misconception that virtual assistants only do low-level work and things like data entry and SEO and blogging. And yes, those are things you can hire a virtual assistant to do, but I'm going to tell you about a lot of other things that virtual assistants can do and actually do handle on a daily basis that are very, very high-level things that you might be surprised about. You might find that, wow, there are some uses, there's some things that I can use a virtual assistant for in my business that will absolutely astonish you and that will save you a ton of money. Now, we're going to also talk specifically about how to find the right VA. I'm actually going to give you some websites today, some of the same websites that we use, and we use all kinds of different means for finding VAs, but I'm going to share these strategies with you. I'm going to tell you exactly how we find them and how you can do it on your own for free if you just want to go out and do that process on your own. Also, we're going to talk about how to know when and if you're actually ready for a virtual assistant, because the reality is not everybody's ready for a virtual assistant right now. And if you are, awesome, and we'll show you how to do that. If you're not, then we're going to kind of show you how to get ready and how to prepare yourself for hiring a virtual team. We're also going to talk about how you can test drive a virtual assistant absolutely free. How you can literally get a full week of virtual assistant time at no cost to you, so you can test drive and make sure that they're the right fit for your team. So these are all things we're going to be covering. So right now what I want to do, and Dave, with your permission, I'm going to start off just kind of sharing my story and how I went from being the Lone Ranger to becoming a world-class team builder, and more importantly, how everybody on the call can do that as well. Would that be all right with you?
That sounds great, Michael. Thank you.
All right, you bet. Let's just jump right into that then. So I always tell people I'm a recovering real estate agent. And by the way, I appreciate that great introduction, Dave. I was a real estate agent for about 20 years. And about 2 years into it, my parents came to me and they said, hey, Michael, you need to consider getting a job at McDonald's because guess what? You'd make more money and you'd work less hours. And, the sad truth of it was they were right. I was working 100-hour weeks and barely making it. And, frankly, I would have made more money if I'd have gone to work for McDonald's. But I wasn't ready to concede defeat yet. So I did exactly what you guys are doing right now. I found the expert in the industry that I wanted to learn more about. I found the Dave Lavinsky of real estate sales. And I went out and I attended a seminar put on by this gentleman. And he said something in that seminar to everybody in the audience that hit me like a ton of bricks. It really hit home for me. And that is, if you don't have an assistant, you are one. Now I'm going to say this again. If you don't have an assistant, you are one. Dave, have you ever heard anybody mention something similar to that, or have you ever thought about that in the past?
I've never heard anyone say that, but I just wrote it down. I scribbled down quickly because I love it. I'd like to know who said that first, because it's not only a great quote. It's a great quote because it's true. Because if you don't have an assistant, you're doing a lot of work that you shouldn't be doing. You're doing a lot of assistant work. Well,
that's just it, and you're so right about that. And by the way, I'm going to totally take credit for that, even though this other gentleman said it to me the first time. I'm going to make it mine. What do they say? If when you hear it once, it's somebody else's. When you say it once, it's kind of both yours, and the third time or fourth time you say it, it becomes yours.
I love it.
Anyway, but the truth of the matter is you're right, because if you're doing assistant-type work, if you don't have an assistant, you're doing things like data entry, you're doing things like answering your phones, setting your own appointments, following up with clients, and you're spending all of your time working in your business when really what you need to be doing is working on your business. And those are two very, very different things. And so, we really want to assess, what am I doing in my business and how do I move from working in it to working on it? And that's where a virtual assistant, or any assistant, whether they're local or virtual, really makes a difference. Well, after attending this gentleman's seminar, I took that to heart, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do it. And I had no idea how I was going to pay for it, by the way. I was going to hire this gal, and I was going to have to pay her more per year than I had ever made in a single year ever on my own. But I had a visa, and I knew how to use it. So I thought, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give it a shot. I trust this guy, and I want to make this happen. I don't want to admit defeat just yet. Well, I got to tell you, hiring that first assistant is the best thing I ever did professionally. In fact, it was the best thing I ever did personally as well, because years later she became my wife, about 4 years later. And Dave, you'll appreciate this, and anybody who's married on the call will appreciate this too. I always jokingly tell people that that's the day that I went to work for her. We got married. So we have a rule in our family, Dave. I don't know how it works at your place, but in our home we have a rule that says any man that says he wears the pants in the family probably lies about other things too.
That's fun. That's a great story. So that was your wife, your first virtual assistant, your first assistant in the office, correct?
Correct. She was the first assistant in the office. And again, guys, we're going to talk about virtual assistants and we're going to talk about local assistants. The key here is you need to get help. And most people, when they start off, they get somebody local to help them out because they don't know how to hire virtual assistants. They don't realize how much they can save by going 100% virtual versus hiring locally. And I didn't know that either, obviously. I mean, this is, 30 years ago, almost. And so actually 22 years ago. Anyway, long story short, we grew that company together to over 44 employees, which is fabulous, and it all sounds great. And it was. I mean, we were making great money. But the problem was we were also spending a lot on payroll. My payroll, Dave, take a guess. What do you think I was spending per month on payroll when I had 44 employees? 44
employees. I'm going to guess, I'm probably not the best person to guess, but I'm going to guess $3,500 an employee. That's, what is that, 44 times $3,500 a month. About $150,000.
You're very, very close. It was $125,000 a month in payroll.
A lot of money.
It's crazy. And that's not the worst part of it. Then you got to pay taxes, Social Security, Medicare, office space. I mean, there's all these expenses that go along with having all these employees, and it was killing me. I was making, at the time, I think I was bringing in about $450,000 a month, and I was spending a good chunk of that, almost half of that, by the time you factored everything in, was going to labor. And so I started talking to my friends around the country that also ran big businesses, and I was asking them, well, what do you think I should do? And they kept suggesting these virtual assistants. Well, I was nervous about that. I didn't know what a virtual assistant was. I didn't know how I was going to find them. How would I, vet them, interview them, train them, manage them? I had more questions than answers. But I reluctantly finally hired my first one, kind of as almost hoping that it would fail, so that I could tell my friends, yeah, see, I tried it out. I told you it wouldn't work. And the crazy part is it actually went great. And this person turned out to be one of my best employees. In fact, she's still with me today, and many years later. And I got to tell you, after that, my wife and my office manager both came to me and they said, hey, we want a virtual assistant as well. And so I hired 2 more. And interestingly, out of those first 3 virtual assistants that I hired, 2 of them were fantastic. One of them was terrible. And you ever watch that show, The Apprentice, Dave?
I have.
Yeah. What's the line from the Donald there?
You're fired?
You're fired. I know. You ever fire somebody in the States? You ever had a challenge firing somebody in the States?
I've done it. It's not the funnest thing in the world.
It sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's miserable.
It is in so many levels, and obviously there's the interpersonal level that makes it very difficult to let someone go in the States, but there's also the issue of what if they throw a fit and they go to the Department of Labor and Industries or whatever your state department is, and they say, hey, I was wrongfully terminated, or hey, they didn't pay me for overtime that I worked, or whatever. It's amazing the issues that they can cause for you and for your business. I mean, have you ever witnessed any of that?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever witnessed any of those issues?
Yeah, I not as much firsthand, but I've had clients that have gone through that process.
It's insane. I mean, it's just agonizing. It really is. And I got to tell you, when I had out of those first 3 VAs that I hired, 2 of them again were great, and there was that one that was terrible. I got to tell you, it was easy. I literally felt like the Donald. I literally just said, you're fired. And that was it. I sent them their last amount of money that I owed them, and it was it. I never heard from them again, never had to deal with the government, never had any follow. I didn't have that ripple effect through the office, when you fire somebody in the office and everybody's like, ooh, Dave's a bad guy. I can't believe he fired Susie. She's got 2 kids, and she's on her own. You don't have to go through any of that.
Right.
And so it was great. And I realized, wow, this is a lot easier than having employees locally. And so I started looking around the office. And I started thinking, all right, well, who else can I move to a virtual position? And literally over the next, call it year and a half, I took that entire office virtual. We literally, and we kept a handful of U.S. employees, a couple of, we kept, I want to say 6 or 7 of our employees that were local, but we sent them home too. We made them go work from their houses. So that we literally got rid of the office and no longer had anybody come into the office. Now, here's some impressive numbers that you'll appreciate, those of you that own a business already. We went from spending $125,000 a month in payroll to just about $40,000 a month using virtual assistants. Now, that's a savings of over 68% on our payroll alone, or $85,000 a month that I was no longer paying out. That now, and that didn't it mean that that $85,000 that went right into my pocket. I didn't have to do another transaction. I didn't have to sell anything else. I literally just made an extra $85,000 a month by making this change.
Now Michael,
yes, please.
So, on paper that's phenomenal. Obviously, you're making $85,000 more a month. How much extra work? And maybe you'll get into this later in the presentation. How much extra work was it to manage the virtual team versus the sort of in-person team? Was there extra work on your part or other members of your full-time team to make that happen?
Man, I love what you just said. The reality is it was less work. And that's, I got to tell you, it's hard to comprehend that. At first, I'll be honest, with the first couple of VAs, it was hard. I had to figure out how to work with them, and it was, we had to build systems around the whole thing, and it was different. It took some getting used to. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it definitely took some getting used to work with virtual assistants versus in-person assistants. Now, what's that?
No, that sounds good. Keep going.
Yeah, well, once we got our head around that and we figured that process out, we actually, one of the things we did was we put a time tracking software system in place where everybody would have to log in when their shift started, and it would track all of their time. In fact, it would take screenshots of their computer every 9 minutes, and they don't know when those screenshots are happening. It just happens at random. And so I would have access to see the screenshots of their computer when they're on my clock. It would also tell me automatically, it would send me an email and tell me, hey, Susie was on Facebook today, or Johnny was on YouTube, or whatever. And what that allowed me to do is really have a much better understanding of what my people were doing every day. And by the way, just by implementing that, I was able to eliminate several positions because of all the waste that was happening with chit-chat and drama and wasted time in the office. So,
got it.
Oh, it was unbelievable. I mean, it changed my world. It changed the way I look at staffing forever. And that's just where it began, by the way. You start looking at just the dollar savings. Obviously you've got the wages and the salaries. Clearly you've got the employment taxes that you're no longer paying. You don't have to pay the Social Security or Medicare. You're not paying labor and industries, workers' compensation, any of that stuff anymore. And it was really, I got to tell you, the office chit-chat and the office drama, getting rid of those two things, it blew me away how much time we had been wasting on those two things. I couldn't believe it. And I don't care if you have 1 employee or 10 employees, people waste time with chit-chat and drama, and it costs you money, and it's real dollars. So aside from that, we also had all the office expenses because we literally got rid of the physical building. So we didn't have any long-term leases anymore, no more triple nets, no more insurance, no more telephone or internet, no more office equipment, no more copiers, no more computers, no more desks, cubicles, chairs, plants, lights, toilet paper, none of that stuff. All of those expenses went away. And let me tell you, those are huge expenses in a business. And so getting rid of all that, in addition to that $85,000 a month I was now saving, I was saving at least that and probably more than that on all of these other things. So from a financial standpoint, I wish I would have done it years earlier. That's the reality.
Yeah, we just hired somebody she started this Monday, and just didn't really think about we just spent a lot of money on a really high quality computer, and just furnishing her office it cost a lot of money. It
does. Well, not only that, but when you get that computer for her, you got to provide her with internet access. Oh, and then you got to have somebody to manage that network. Oh, and you have to have somebody come in to fix the computer when it breaks and crashes and she gets the blue screen of death. I mean, when you go virtual, they're responsible for all of that. You don't pay for any of that stuff.
Got it.
Oh, it's huge. And the downtime alone, oh my gosh. Here's something very interesting. What about a power outage? So if you have an office somewhere in downtown, wherever, and there's a power outage, guess what? Your whole company's out. Your whole company's down. When your employees are spread all over the world, if there's a power outage, it might affect one or two of your people, but it doesn't affect the whole team.
Well, I didn't think about that.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah,
So,
we've sat in our office without internet. Had a lot of people sitting here without internet. On many an occasion, I'm not a happy camper.
and you just watch. You're sitting there. You see those people sitting around doing nothing, and you're just watching the dollars tick away.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's a painful feeling. I know that feeling. I've been there.
Okay.
Oh man. Well, let me ask you this. Let's switch gears just for a second. Dave, have you ever felt like you were married to your phone or your email when you were on vacation?
On vacation, yeah. You know, it's during the week I'm pretty regimented. I have a pretty good productivity system in place. But when I am on vacation, particularly, I don't have a good system in place when I'm on vacation. I do find myself checking email and stuff because I don't want to come back to the office, a week later and have, a gazillion emails and voice messages.
Yep. And this is the dilemma of virtually every, particularly solopreneurs, people that are working on their own. And to quote my friend Bob Allen, I don't know if you guys know who Robert Allen is, but he always calls it the solopreneur, meaning income is low because they're doing it on their own. But Bob makes a good point. That the solopreneurs, they get married to their cell phone, and we all do this. We've all gone through this at some point. And this is, by the way, the number one reason why I think everyone in the world should have at least one and probably multiple virtual assistants. And here it is. Here's my favorite quote: "No success in the world can compensate for failure in the home." I'm going to read that again. I hope you guys are writing this down. It's no success in the world can compensate for failure in the home. So the gist here is when you're on vacation, who should be handling those things? Who should be handling those emails and those voicemails? Instead of them just piling up, like you mentioned, Dave, which is, by the way, we all have been there. We've all faced that dilemma at some point, and some of us are still there, right? And so we want to have a virtual assistant handling all that stuff while we're gone so that when we come back, our inbox is cleaned out. It's done. The voicemails have been returned. Everybody's been talked to and taken care of. And this is what happened, and you'll see this picture. And by the way, I'd love to know if anybody on the webinar can tell me where that picture was taken. I'd be very interested to see how many people can guess where that picture was taken. But when we took our entire office virtual, we literally were able to take, that's myself and my wife and our two wonderful kids, and we were literally able to take 6 weeks off. We went to Europe, and we traveled all over Europe. So there's a hint. Maybe that'll help you in guessing where that mountain is. And we literally, for that 6 weeks, I didn't check email. I didn't check voicemail. I didn't even call the office. I didn't check in with anybody. I disconnected. I got on Facebook a couple of times and posted about stuff we were doing on our trip, but I did not communicate with my office. I knew they had things under control because I'd taken everybody virtual. I had the systems and the people in place to make sure that the business ran smoothly while I was gone, and the business grew while we were on vacation. So that's huge, and I really would like to have that be an opportunity for all of you. And so, okay, looks like we've got some people weighing in, and I got a bunch of people. Switzerland, yes, you're very close. No, that is not Disneyland, but you're close. There's something at Disneyland, and yes, I see Scott and several other people have guessed correctly. That is the Matterhorn in Zermatt, Switzerland, which is my favorite city in the entire. Actually, it's really a ski village, but it's my favorite place in the entire world. What a beautiful location. So. Anyway, so just remember, as you think about that quote, no success in the world can compensate for failure in the home, please just remember, you've got to take time to be with your family. And one thing that I did here back in 2010, the end of 2010, I made a switch in my life, and I decided that I was only going to work 3.5 days a week. And I didn't care what that did to my income. And I was going to accomplish that by always employing everybody virtually and setting very, very strict boundaries for my schedule. And I tell you, to this day, I still live that, and it's worked very, very well for us. And our income's actually been just fine. In fact, it's gone up. So I know that you can do that in your market and in your business too. You just have to put the systems and the people in place to make that possible. Dave, anything you want to mention on that?
No, it sounds great. I'm writing down a couple questions I have, like sensitivity. If I had a virtual assistant, like handling my email, like emails that I'm getting from friends versus colleagues and clients, etc. Are you going to address stuff like that later, or should I ask them later, or should I ask that now?
Let's talk about that now. I like that, and that's a great one. And the reality is, your key virtual assistant, the person who's going to be your number one, kind of your executive assistant, and we're going to talk in just a moment about a lot of different types of virtual assistants. But let's talk specifically about your executive assistant. The person that's checking your emails, checking your voicemails, that's responding to things for you, that's managing your travel schedule, that's handling your life, basically managing your life, both personally and professionally. They're going to have access to some sensitive information. So this is a person you're going to want to be able to trust, right? Because they're going to see you talking about things that are nobody else's business. They're going to see you. Yeah, I mean, it's a very sensitive position. And yes, Dave, it's very critical to have the right person in that position. And being an executive assistant is different than being any other type of assistant in a lot of ways because of that. Now, there is a book, and I'm trying to remember who the author is. It's called Managing Up, and gosh darn it, I had a copy of it on my desk, and I don't see it here. Oh, there it is. Hold on. Managing Up. Nope, wrong book. Anyway, take a look at that book. Jump on Amazon.com. Look at Managing Up. It's a great book about about how an assistant literally controls the world of the executive, and that the executive needs to rely on that assistant for everything. And the more you can rely on that assistant, the more efficient you can be with your time. The more efficient you can be with your time, the more you can get done. But you're not.
Roseanne Badowski?
That's it's Susan Lewandowski. Is that right?
Yeah, Roseanne Badowski. Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, Roseanne Badowski. That's right. Was that Jack? Who was it? Who was it? It was Jack Kemp's assistant, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember either, but it was Roseanne Badowski, and that's a great book. And so anyway, long story short, grab yourself a copy of that. And you know what? You might think about when you hire an assistant, whether they're local, virtual, in person, wherever, you want to make sure they read that book. I think it's a great book for every assistant to read. Okay. But the key here is you got to do what Dave talks about. You got to get to a point where you can trust this person, because if you can't trust them, you can't rely on them. If you can't rely on them, you're always second-guessing them. If you're always second-guessing them, what good does it do you to have them? So, good stuff. All right, anything else on that, Dave?
No, that's great. Please continue.
All right. So let's talk about the differences in VAs. They come in all shapes and sizes. Obviously, their backgrounds vary, their skill sets vary, their pay ranges vary greatly. And that a lot of things impact that, like whether or not they're from around the world or if they're from the U.S. Clearly you pay more money for someone in the U.S. than you do for someone located in other parts of the world. Long-term versus project. When you're hiring somebody and they know that this is going to be a long-term career versus just a project, they'll do it for less money. They'll charge you a lower hourly rate when you give them more hours because they get that consistent income. So that's something else you want to consider. Quality versus price is also very important. Now, you would be very surprised at the quality that you can get for very little money abroad. That being said, there is also a correlation with quality versus price. There's virtual assistants out there that'll work for you for $2 an hour, and the reality is that's not the kind of people we hire. We hire people that are very, very good at what they do, and we pay them a good and fair wage, something that is less than what we would have to pay here in the U.S., but it's much more than they would make in their part of the world working in some other career. And so it's great for them, it's great for us, and it's great for our clients because everybody wins. So you want to think about some of those things. Now, as you're interviewing people and as you're thinking about, gosh, what can I use a virtual assistant for? Well, let's talk about some different things they can do. And Dave, feel free to chime in at any time and share some of the things you've used virtual assistants for. But ultimately, they can do anything that doesn't require physical presence in your office. So they're not going to come sweep your floors. They're not going to come lick stamps and lick envelopes for you, but they can do just about everything else. For real estate agents and mortgage brokers, a lot of them use them as listing coordinators or transaction coordinators. Something that's become very, very popular is bookkeeping. And I got to tell you, Dave, what do you expect in the United States? What would you pay for a great bookkeeper?
On an annual basis, I'd probably say $50,000.
How about just an hourly basis even? What do you think you'd pay per hour for a great one?
I'd guess it would probably be $75 or $100 an hour.
Yeah, and that would be a really high level. That's like an accountant level. For just straight bookkeeping, what we're seeing locally in the U.S., we're seeing anywhere from, on the very low end, $25 an hour to the very high end, about $65 an hour. Now, I'll tell you, for virtual assistants, this is crazy. My bookkeeper happens to be in the Philippines, for example, and I pay her $9 an hour, and let me tell you, she's the best bookkeeper I've ever had. She's fantastic. And that is, and by the way, $9 an hour, a lot of people are thinking, well, gosh, you're taking advantage of her. No, I'm not. Actually, that's way more money than she could ever make there. She loves what she's paid. She does very, very well. And not only is she supporting herself on that income, she's supporting her family, and sometimes a lot of these folks will be supporting their extended family on the salaries that they're making as virtual assistants. So anyway, bookkeeping's been phenomenal. It's been a great one for us. Receptionists. Someone to answer your phone. And yes, they can answer your phone from anywhere in the world. They do not have to be located at your front desk, so to speak. And there's all kinds of great programs out there for this that make it very easy. Things like Google Voice, there's Packet 8, there's Ring Central. There's all kinds of great services out there that are very inexpensive. Most of them are less than $50 a month. Some of them are less than $10 a month. That you can use for this. Skype is another great one, especially for outbound calls. Skype is great for outbound calling, and it's very inexpensive. Go ahead, Dave.
No, please keep going.
Okay. We had telemarketers and appointment setters. This is another big one. This is something that, I'm an old school lead generation kind of guy, and I just believe there's no substitute for voice-to-voice communication. And telemarketers and appointment setters are, Fortune 500 companies have been using these guys for years and years and years and years. It's only in the last 8 years to 10 years that they've really become available and a resource for the entrepreneur and for the small business owner. And so these telemarketers and appointment setters, you can get them, you can get really, really good ones for as little as $11 an hour with an accent, or if you want somebody with no accent or maybe even a sexy British accent, you can get them in about that $15 an hour range, and they're amazing. I mean, this is what these guys do for a living. They're professional telemarketers, and it's not, you don't have to pay Social Security and all that other stuff on them, and you don't have to train them on how to be a telemarketer. They already know that because that's what they've done. They're not just testing it out. So, search engine optimization, blogging, social media, these are all very, very common uses for virtual assistants. Now, keep in mind, the person that you would use for social media or blogging or SEO, that's a very different personality type than a telemarketer. And we do what's called a DISC personality profile when we hire people. In fact, we make that a part of our interview process so that we can make sure that their personality type is right for the job that we're placing them in. This is something you want to do as well. Somebody that's got a great DISC profile that you can use for free, everybody knows who Tony Robbins is. If you jump on Tony's website, he's got a great little free tool on his website for testing someone's personality type and helping you identify if they're good as a telemarketer versus a bookkeeper, for example. Web design and development. Now this one's huge. Dave, let me ask you this: what do you think most people pay? And this is a very high-end expense in most instances. But what do you expect on an hourly basis people in the U.S. are paying for website design and website development?
I know the answer is way, way, way too much. We've been going overseas for that for years and years and years now. I don't know the exact amount, but it's thousands of dollars too much.
Yeah. I agree. What I've found is that most people are paying on the extremely low end, they're paying $65 an hour, and on the high end, they're paying as much as $225 an hour. And sometimes they don't realize that's the hourly rate they're paying because they might be paying per project. But at the end of the day, that's what they're paying, and it's way too much. We have an entire department. In fact, we do web design and development for Fortune 500 companies, and we do it for entrepreneurs as well. And we're at $25 an hour, which is insanely cheap for incredibly talented individuals. I mean, these are all the big websites you would think of out there that are just crushing it. Are almost entirely designed and developed by people from other parts of the world, and frankly, their talent pool, the talent pool globally is insanely deep. There are some amazingly talented people in other parts of the world, so huge stuff.
Hey, Michael, can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I think this may just be a vernacular question. I have traditionally thought of a VA or virtual assistant as an executive assistant, and for these other things like SEO, website development, I've thought of them as an outsourcer. When you say VA, you're referring to everything, is that correct?
That's correct.
Vernacular incorrect?
When I talk about a virtual assistant, I mean any position that they're doing something for you. It could be any kind of a task, any kind of a job for you from a location other than your own. So yes, it could be any of these things. Now, we do talk in terms of executive assistant. So if you wanted to hire an executive assistant, that's that person that's doing your emails and your voicemails and handling your appointments and all that stuff. And that would be what we would call an executive assistant. But virtual assistant could be anything.
And does virtual assistant have to be long-term? Like an executive assistant is clearly you want somebody that's long-term, that's going to work for you for a year or possibly forever. Versus sometimes with a website, you want them to work for you for, let's call it 2 months, and that's it. Is there any distinction there as well?
Well, you're right about that. Some positions like executive assistants, bookkeeping, these are things that you're probably going to have this person on your team for many years to come. When it comes to web development, you might only need them for a month or two, or even telemarketing. Maybe you've got an event coming up that you're promoting, and you just want to have somebody call all the people that registered for your event to let them know about a special whatever bonus or something like that. So yes, there are temporary positions as well as permanent positions. Now, keep this in mind. Generally speaking, not always, but generally speaking, it's less expensive on an hourly basis when you're hiring someone as a permanent placement versus hiring someone for a temporary position.
Got it.
So that's something you want to think about as you're getting ready to hire a virtual assistant for whatever you're going to hire them for.
Perfect.
Yeah, great questions. Thank you for that. And here's the thing: I'm sure that if you're having that question come to mind, I'm sure there's people on this webinar that are thinking the same thing, and so it's really helpful to have you jumping in with that. I really appreciate that.
Well, I'm asking questions not only to help everyone else out, but we are already, I'm already using virtual assistants in my business, and I, like everyone else, I want to get better at it as myself. So, that's why we have you on the line today, because you're the expert. So I appreciate you. These are the questions that I have, so I can do more of this more successfully myself.
Well, and I'm glad to hear you say that you want to get better at it, because Dave, I consider you to be a very experienced employer of virtual assistants, and all of us, it doesn't matter how much experience we have, we can always get better at what we're doing, and the better we become as employers, the better results we get out of our teams. And that's something people don't realize. A lot of times people hire a virtual assistant, they just expect them to know everything, do everything, and I shouldn't have to manage them or talk to them or train them or do anything. And the reality is, the more time, effort, and energy you invest in that person, particularly in training, the better they will be on your behalf. They will become ninjas on your behalf, and that's what you want. You want a team of ninjas out there just killing it on your behalf.
Agreed. Excellent. Okay.
Well, research is another thing that a lot of people use virtual assistants for. That's very, very common. Data entry, managing your client relationship management software, checking and handling your emails and voicemails. And, this is one, Dave, can you guess what the average person spends on a number of hours checking emails and voicemails each day?
I had this number once, but it was, maybe I'm wrong. It was something like 3 hours, something crazy. What is it?
That's exactly what it was. The average, and this is from 4 years ago, the average 4 years ago, and I'm sure it's worse today, the average from 4 years ago was 3 hours a day checking emails and voicemails. Now check this out. If you divide your emails up into three groups, your emails and voicemails into three groups, there's the group, the lower third is junk emails, solicitors, stuff that can be deleted or thrown out. Then there's the middle third, and that's people that if you had a virtual assistant trained really well on your preferences and how you want stuff handled, a great virtual assistant can handle that middle third. And then you've got the top third of stuff that you and only you can and should be handling. So effectively what we've determined is if I have a virtual assistant handling my emails and my voicemails, I can literally shave 2 hours a day off of the time that I'm spending at work doing those things, or 10 hours a week that I no longer have to spend doing those things. What would you do with 2 hours a week? I mean, if all a virtual assistant could do is save you that 10 hours a week, imagine what you could do with that time. And so,
that's powerful.
It is. It's huge. Managing your calendar, booking your flights, your hotel, building mobile apps. We have virtual assistants out there building mobile apps for people. Acting as their chief financial officer, project directors, transcriptionists, graphics designers. Here's a great one. Teaching your kids to play an instrument or to learn a language. I mean, when you really get your head around, man, they can do just about anything. All of a sudden, the world is your oyster, and all these possibilities come up. Creating full motion animated videos, all this great stuff. So lots of great opportunities out there with VAs. And here's something to keep in mind. There's a lot of myths out there about VAs. One of them is that, oh my gosh, they don't speak great English. Well, that's not true. In fact, some VAs speak perfect English, better than I do, which if you've been listening to us for a while, you can probably guess that's not a stretch, right? So, you can get, by the way, not all virtual assistants are from the Philippines or India. In fact, only a small percentage of the VAs that we hire are from the Philippines or India. We hire a lot of people out of Central and South America. We hire a lot of people out of Europe, out of England, out of South Africa. Literally, we hire people from all over the world. And it's interesting because in different parts of the world, you have different skill sets that are fairly predominant in those parts of the world based on the educational system and the culture. And so we target certain job types in different parts of the world because we want a specific personality or cultural belief system to be in that particular position. And so, isn't that interesting?
It is. It reminds me of one of my first web designers. They were in Sweden, and their design in Sweden is phenomenal. At least for as far as I'm concerned, I love the design that comes out of Sweden. So they're just really talented. There's a very, very good design eye in Sweden for whatever reason. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you're right, and it does. It's really geographically centric. And by the way, they often require less management than local staff. We talked about that time tracking software that we use, which is very inexpensive, by the way. It's $10 a month per seat. So you'd buy a seat for you and buy a seat for your virtual assistant, and all of a sudden for $20 a month, you have a glimpse into their day that you don't get if they're sitting right next to you. And by the way, their work quality is often superior to local, and this happens because instead of driving my employment hiring process through whatever my neighborhood will support, now all of a sudden the entire global marketplace becomes my hiring pool, and so that's huge. By the way, this is just a little quote from one of our clients. In sharing this, not just to illustrate that what a great job we think we do for people, but also to illustrate that virtual assistants, whether you hire them through us or you hire them through some other source, are a great tool. Ken says, my virtual assistant is terrific. She saves me money, does a fantastic job, and is invaluable to my business. The process of hiring through virtual assistant staffing was easy, fast, and efficient. With the free trial, I knew I had nothing to lose. I highly recommend this service. His virtual assistant, actually, he hired her through us about 2 years ago, and still has her today. And so, all right. So when should you hire a virtual assistant? Well, when you're ready for growth, when you've experienced attrition or feeling overwhelmed, if you just need to save some money on your staffing, when you're ready to take your business to the next level. And here's one that's very important: when you can afford one. Now, be careful on this one. What I don't want you to do is I don't want you to stretch so far to be able to hire somebody that all of a sudden you have to let them go in 2 or 3 months, because you don't want to invest your time, effort, energy, and money training somebody only to then let them go 3 months later because you don't have enough money to keep them on board. And so, that being said, you don't need to have $1 million in the bank before you hire your first assistant either. And so, keep that in mind. So let's talk specifically about how to find the right VA. Now, I'm going to give you some websites that we use, and we use all kinds of sources. We do radio, we do a lot of referral-based marketing. We scrape all kinds of different websites. We market with pay-per-click and AdWords, all kinds of stuff. But speaking specifically about some of the websites that are out there, if you want to do it yourself, jump on places like Craigslist, elance.com, Fiverr.com, 99designs.com, Odesk, Guru.com, Monster.com, which is kind of getting to be a little old school, almost a little passe nowadays, but it's still out there. It's still a resource. There's lots of job boards out there. You want to start by going out and if you're going to do it on your own, go hit up a lot of these resources. Start looking for what you're looking for. You'll find that there are literally hundreds of thousands of people out there on these websites looking for work right now. Now, once you've done that, you've got to take them through a process. You can't just hire the first person you find on one of these websites. You've got to do a great job of interviewing and vetting this person. So I'm going to show you what we do. And by the way, if you were to hire a headhunter like us, this is the process that we use on your behalf. But you can use the same process yourself. We provide guaranteed results, so we give every one of our clients a free test drive with their virtual assistant. So we give them that first week to test that person out and make sure they're a great fit for them. And our system for finding, vetting, and hiring these folks is very straightforward. First thing we do is we gather usually around 400 to 500 resumes, and we go through between 400 and 500 resumes to start with. Now, we'll probably go through this process twice with each position we hire, so we'll literally go through about 1,000 resumes to hire one person. But what we'll do is after we've gone through the resumes, we'll pick out the top, call it 10 to 20%, and we'll start doing verbal interviews with those. And so we do just the first interview is a very, very quick interview. It's just a quick, I want to find out how's their English, do they have a brain, or, is this somebody who's fairly intelligent? Is this somebody that I even want to engage further to weed them out, to determine if they're going to be a good fit for me or for my client? Once we've done that, we put them through a series of tests. We do skills tests. We do internet connection speed tests. We do that DISC personality profile that we talked about. So there's all these different tests we put them through. Then we take, so now we've narrowed it way down, and now we take the top, call it the top 5 or 10 candidates from that, and we go back through and we do another very thorough interview this time. And the people that come out of that process, and usually about a third to sometimes as many as a half of those will come out, they get sent to another interview with a different person on our team who does a higher level interview for them. So this is important. You want to go through this process, and it sounds like a lot of work. I get that. And if you want to have us do it for you, that's great. We'd love to do it for you. We don't, the fees that we charge are all built into the hourly rate that you're paying for that VA anyway. But that being said, if you want to do it on your own, that's great. Just make sure you go through that process and you do those things, and don't try and shortcut that process. There's nothing worse than shortcutting the hiring process.
Dave?
I
just want to butt in real quick. I can't agree with you more here. We've hired a whole lot of people, and the longer we take in the process of screening them and filtering, at the end of the day, we get much, much better results every single time. You have to do it right. The negative of doing it yourself is when I want somebody, I don't want to go through that hiring process because it's real work and it takes a while. So it is that catch-22 that you have to do it right, but it does take time, and it takes you away from other things you want to do.
Well, that's how we became a business. It's funny because that's why I got out of real estate, because I realized, well, it's one of the main reasons why I realized that virtual assistants make sense. I mean, there's just no way around it. They make sense. It's great to have virtual assistants. The challenge is that most people don't have the systems in place. They don't have the time. They don't, or they don't want to take the time, effort, energy to go through that process and to really do a thorough job of finding, vetting, and hiring these folks. And so I thought, wow, well, this is a great service we could provide, because we got pretty good at it. After replacing those 44 in-person people that we had working with us, we got pretty good at going through that process. And then now, having done this for a living for almost 2.5 years now, we've gotten extremely good at taking people through that process. And we've actually, believe it or not, we've taken a process that used to take us a couple of months, and we've got it down now to about 2 weeks. And so from the time someone comes to me and says, okay, Michael, here's what I need, I can place almost every position within 2 weeks now, because of the number of people that we have on our staff combined with the systems that we have in place. And man, I got to tell you, you're right. It makes a huge difference to go through that process. And now, even after going through all that, is it possible you might get a bad fit once in a while? Sure, you bet. It can happen. And for us, if you're one of our clients, what we do is we just replace that person for free for you. We'll happily, if you call us up and say, hey, Michael, this person, I love having a VA. This particular VA wasn't a great fit. No worries. Call us up. We'll get rid of them. We'll get you a new one. And we'll give you another free week with the new one so that you can test them out and make sure they're the right fit for your team. So not only that, we'll take care of all the payroll, any taxes involved based on where they're from. We'll help you resolve any issues. We'll basically act as your virtual HR department. And we don't charge you any extra for that. So again, here's our 1-week gift to you. For those of you that haven't done so already, jump on growthink.com/VA. Again, that's growthink.com/VA. And here's what we're going to do for you. Once you go to that website, you're going to fill out the form on that page. You're going to get a call from one of my virtual assistants who's going to set up a time for you to meet with either myself or my partner or one of our high-level consultants. They're going to dig deep into your needs. We're going to take a half hour on the phone with you. We're going to dig as deep as possible into your specific needs and find out exactly what you want and need out of a virtual assistant. Then we're going to shoot you over a copy of our standard agreement. And this is important because it protects you. It includes a non-compete, non-disclosure agreement and those types of things that protect you from the VA. In other words, it makes it so that the VA can't share any of your information with anybody else, neither can we, and all that good stuff. Then we're going to search the world for your perfect virtual assistant. And that's going to take us, like I said, about 2 weeks. And we're going to bring that VA back to you. We're going to let you test drive them for free for a full week. When you love them, keep them, and we'll begin billing you after that 1-week trial period. If for some reason you don't absolutely love them, call us up. We'll replace them absolutely free and give you another free week. All right. Now, we'll get back to that offer in just a second here, but I want to tell you just real quick, a quick way. Dave and I know you go to a lot of events, and I'm sure there's a lot of people here on the call that go to a lot of events. What happens? Talk to me about the networking that happens at these events. What happens with all those business cards that you collect when you go to an event, normally, for most people?
They get, I'll tell you, for me, they get stuck in a rubber band in my desk.
And they sit in that rubber band in your desk until eventually you look at them and you say, oh my gosh, these are from a year ago. I'm going to throw them away because these people won't even remember me now.
Pretty
That's
much.
the harsh part.
I remember which bundle it's in if I need to grab one, but they pretty much sit there.
Now, what if you could guarantee at your success from each event, if you could guarantee that you would literally follow up with each and every person that you wanted to follow up with at that event, and that you would be on the phone with them within 2 weeks following the event? Would that be beneficial?
That would be very helpful, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Let me tell you what I do. Here's how I use one of my virtual assistants. So I take all those cards that I've collected, and before I even leave the event venue, I go to the front desk at that event, and I ask them to scan in those business cards and email them to me. They never charge me for this. I've never had them say no. They always do it. And so I just take them down to the front desk, they scan them in, they send me an email. I then forward that email to my virtual assistant. Now, I've got one virtual assistant that inputs all the names for me. I have 2 different ones for this because I have a whole telemarketing department. For most people, they'll use one assistant for both of these functions. So the VA then inputs those business cards into your CRM, and then they call each and every one of those people, and they set up an appointment for you to talk with them the following week. Now, if all your virtual assistant did was follow up those people and schedule those appointments for you, how much value would you get out of that?
If you go into a lot of events, it'll be extremely valuable.
It'd be huge. It'd be gigantic. And so, and I'll tell you that I built, for those of you, and I'm assuming we've got a lot of people on the webinar today that are doing a lot of affiliate marketing as well. And I went from literally 0 affiliates to over 1,000 affiliates promoting our services in literally less than 10 months. And 99% of my effort was this. I would go to a bunch of events, I'd get to know a bunch of people, and I would always follow up with them after the event. And let me tell you, how many people out of that event do you think actually called and set appointments with these people?
Very few. I was just at this event in Austin last week, and I have, the people that I had to follow up with, I did it yesterday, so it did take me a few days to do that, and then I'm still waiting to hear back from people that were supposed to contact me, and it may or may not happen, but it should have happened by now.
Well, and you think about it, how much money do you spend going to these events? You got airfare, hotel, the event itself, food, rental car, all, it's thousands of dollars to go to these events. Now, I'm a believer. I love events. I love the networking that happens. I mean, it's a great way to do business, and it's fun to do it as well. That being said, from a monetary standpoint, don't throw your money away by not following up with people. Make sure that you follow up with everybody you meet at these events. You guys, you can do it. The key is never be the guy that suffers from nobody can do it as well as me syndrome. And I'll tell you, my wife is a perfect example of this, where she's great at what she does. And I'll tell you, more often than not, this is something that women tend to have a bigger challenge with this than men, because for us guys, we love handing stuff off. We love giving our work to somebody else to do it. But women, they know that, hey, if that person screws it up, I'm going to have to come back behind them and fix it. And so more often than not, the women that I do business with are more particular about who they hire and more particular about the quality of work and all that sort of thing, which they should be. I love that about them. So here's the key. You've got to learn to delegate. You've got to be okay with delegation. And the way you start with this is make a list of everything you do. And just sit down and brainstorm everything you do every day, write it down, and then go back through it and highlight all the things that you want to get off your plate. Then you've created your job description for your VA. Now your job becomes training that person. Now they're going to come to you with skill sets already. They're going to come to you knowing how to do a lot of stuff. But you still have to train them on how you want them to do it. And this is critical. The people that succeed, whether it's with virtual assistants or in-person assistants, the people that succeed at the highest level are the people that spend the most time, effort, and energy on training. And it's very, very easy to do this. What I like to do in an effort to train, motivate, and hold them accountable on a daily basis is hold what's called a daily huddle. This takes me about 15 minutes each morning. I gather my entire team on a Skype call. We talk about yesterday's accomplishments, today's goals and tasks, the potential challenges we might encounter. I motivate and inspire and direct the efforts of troops on that call. We'll even do role-playing for my telemarketers and people that are forward-facing that have client contact. I'll even role-play with them different situations on that call. And then we send them on their way for the day. And one of the other tools that we use for training is we like to take, when I'm explaining to somebody how to do stuff on the internet or how to do stuff that's web-based, I'll get my computer out and I'll use Jing Screencast or Camtasia to record short videos on how to do it. And what that does is it records what's going on my screen while I'm talking about it. These are very inexpensive tools. Sometimes you can get them for free even. And it's huge because now instead of me having to tell 2 or 3 people the same thing over again, I'll just say, hey, go watch videos 1 through 5 and call Susie if you have any questions, which makes training a lot easier. Then, obviously, we've got Skype and Dropbox that are also free resources that we use. If you're not already using Skype or Dropbox, you need to be. They're great, they're free, and they'll revolutionize your business and get you away from having a server in your office, for example, which is, man, I get to tell you, the worst thing you can do is run everything through a server in your office where you've got to be the one responsible for that, unless that's the business you're in. But for the rest of you who are small business owners, you want to get away from that. All right. So we're running out of time, so what I want to do before we get to a couple of quick questions here, I want to jump on that offer for you again. You're going to get to test drive your new virtual assistant for up to 1 week on me. You're only going to pay if and when you feel like you have the right virtual assistant on your team. As we discussed, I can't guarantee that your first placement will be perfect, but I can absolutely guarantee that you won't pay anything until you're 100% happy. We will always take 100% of the risk so that you don't have to. Our goal is to make sure you've got the right VA, take the majority of tasks off your plate, and help you focus on money-generating activities so that you're working on your business and not in your business. And that will in turn give you more profit, less expense, and what we all want, which is more free time and the ability to go enjoy it. Doing that is going to help us develop a long-term relationship with you and with your team, and you will then become a raving fan just like Dave has, referring us to everyone you know. So again, jump on that website, growthink.com/VA, and Dave, while they're doing that, let's give you a chance to ask any questions or make any comments you want to make, and we'll see what other questions we've got from the audience.
Great. First off, thank you so much. Your screen's still a little cut off, so it is GrowthInk, but it is on the upper left-hand corner, the growthink.com/VA. Fill out the form to work with Michael. This is great. A couple questions that I wrote down here. You've already answered a lot of mine. This question: how many VAs can you manage? So, can one person manage, the VA who's working as the executive assistant, and another one that's doing SEO, and another one's doing, web development, another bookkeeper? How many VAs can one person realistically manage?
Well, a lot. And that's a great question, by the way. For example, I want to say somewhere between 30 and 40 virtual assistants on my internal team at any given time, in addition to the hundreds that we have placed with clients. So the reality is, one person can manage a lot more virtual assistants than they can in-person assistants, because you don't have a lot of the issues with the VAs that you have with an internal team. In other words, you don't have the drama, you don't have the chit-chat, you don't have the I'm on Facebook throughout the day, because the system takes care of most of that. So I would say the reality is for a solopreneur, let's talk first about our solopreneurs. I would say you could easily, effectively manage anywhere from 5 to 10 virtual assistants on your own without any help whatsoever. When you start getting beyond 10, you may want to put one of those assistants in charge of managing the rest of them, and in assigning tasks out and following up to make sure those tasks were completed.
And do you want all of your VAs to have at least a web camera? Because I think when you do your daily huddles, I know some people use Google Hangouts where you can have up to 9 people. We used to do a lot of calls on Google Hangouts where you can see them. Do you like that daily huddle to be via something like Google Hangouts where you can sort of not only hear them but see them?
I actually prefer to use Skype. The thing I like about Skype's free, number one. Skype, I can have, now if I pay for Skype, I've got Skype Premium, so I can literally do video. I can do voice-to-voice for free with as many people as I want on the same call. I can do video-to-video if everybody's got Skype, I think it's Premium or something like that. But at the end of the day, we live on Skype, and the fact of the matter is, most people out there in the world are more familiar with Skype than they are any other service for connecting abroad.
Got it. Okay. What about, is there any, it's interesting, when you talk about the outsourcing outside the United States, and there's lots of benefits. We used to work with people in Philippines and India, et cetera. It used to be great to send them the assignment at the end of the day here in the United States, and when I come in the next morning, it's done because they worked different hours, and I love that. Anything about it being, comments about, hey, it's sort of anti-American that you're taking jobs away from the United States and cases putting them elsewhere. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, the reality is, as Americans, we need to, we've gone from being the people that are turning the tool to create the widget to being the people managing the people that are turning the tool to create the widget. And I think the reality is we just got to get smarter because whether we believe it or not, it's a global economy, and we can either choose to take advantage of that, or we can become victims of that. And the ability to hire virtual assistants allows us to compete with corporate America, where the entrepreneur couldn't do that in years past, because corporate America, Fortune 500 companies, they've been employing people from all over the world for decades. And now that we can do the same thing as entrepreneurs, guess what? Now, you can hire people for less money. You can hire people that are better at what they do and that are more efficient. I mean, just look at Microsoft and Apple. I mean, look at how many jobs they have that are overseas. And so I look at it like this: we're saving the small businesses. Really, we're almost on a mission to save small business with this. So
I think it's great. I pretty much answered, my core questions.
Well, let me jump in.
One is, how do you know are there any sort of telltale signs that your virtual assistant is, like from the get-go, working out or not working out, or is it just, have you found that it's just pretty, you can tell right away, it's just a gut reaction, or any thoughts on that?
I think you can tell usually, within that first week for sure, and that's part of the reason why we give people that first week as a trial to be able to really take it up and take a look at that person. But you get kind of a gut feeling. You do. I mean, if they're showing up late, showing up late once is permissible. Showing up late, 2 days in the same week, something's wrong. That's not okay. If they're asking the same question once or twice, well, that's not the end of the world. But if they're asking the same question 4 or 5 times, something's wrong. They're not getting it. And either I'm doing a bad job training, or I've got the wrong person because they just can't get their head around it. Now, another thing you want to look at is, do I have the right person in the right job? And does what I was originally hiring for match what my needs are currently today? And so those are dynamics that can have a big impact on whether or not that person's the right person long term. And I'll tell you, I like the way that Bill Marriott, the founder of Marriott Hotels, when he was handing the empire over to his son, Bill Jr., he made a comment that has always stuck with me when it comes to staffing. And he says, if you've got someone who's incapable of doing a particular job, find a job they can do or terminate now.
Right.
And I think that's really solid advice, and it's very simple to follow. If you're convinced, if you've determined that they're not capable of doing a particular job, but you like the person and they're a good person, great, put them into a different job that's better suited for them. If that's not an option, you got to get rid of them. Not tomorrow, today. And so that's important stuff.
What about hours of work? So, if I'm here on the East Coast in New York, would I want the person, if they're overseas, to work special hours, so there's X hours of overlap with me versus, you're on the West Coast, it would be a 3-hour difference. How do you manage that, the time difference? It
really depends on the client. And so, I'll give you an example. 99% of our VAs work during your time zone. So if your business hours are 8 to 5 Eastern, that's when the VA is going to work. Now, you might say, well, I'm hiring some telemarketers, and I want my telemarketers to call when people are home after work, or I want them to call on the weekend, or whatever. Well, that's fine. We can adjust for that. Now, it's best. I always like to have that stuff happening during the week, and I like to give my virtual assistants the weekend off because, hey, they're people too, right? And I want them to sharpen their saw. That being said, they need to be available to work on my schedule and on my terms. And that means for you, the client, it's important that you have that person available when you need them. So that's 100% determined by the client.
Got it. I think you have answered all the questions I have.
That's great stuff.
A lot of type other questions as well, or
yeah, but we're over by about 10 minutes, but here's my philosophy. We still got a lot of people on the call right now, and I want to make sure as long as you guys are here, I'm going to do the best I can. I've got a few more minutes before I've got to get to my next call, so I want to make sure that I answer as many of their questions as possible. So let's scroll down here. I've got a lot of questions in here. Let's see. And by the way, one of the people made a comment that was Jack Welch, that Roseanne Badowski was Jack Welch's assistant. Thank you for that. Jonathan Myers shared that with us, and you're absolutely right, Jonathan. That was a great book. And I hope that, again, if you guys are going to be hiring an executive assistant, take the time, grab a copy of Managing Up and share it with your virtual assistant. Now the difference in hourly rates can be huge. Like I said, when you're hiring virtual assistants, they're going to range. Really good virtual assistants, the reality is you're going to pay anywhere from, call it, I'll say $7 an hour on the very low end for a really good one, up to a maximum of $15 an hour. Unless you're hiring web development and design and those kinds of things, you're never going to be paying more than $15 an hour. And $15 an hour, I mean, that's the type of virtual assistant that corporate America hires, for, to manage a CEO. And so
I pay my babysitter.
Yeah, what's that?
That's how much I have to pay a babysitter to watch my kids.
Isn't that crazy? I know, and you can get an executive level executive assistant for the same dollars you're paying your babysitter, who couldn't. Well, maybe your babysitter's different than mine, but I wouldn't want my babysitter managing my business. So, all right, so let's see some other questions here. Tools and systems to monitor work progress. We talked a little bit about that. And really the big thing is it's we've got that time tracking software. And Alan, that's a great question. Alan's asking, how do I track my VA's time? How do I ensure that they're not wasting time on personal issues, distractions, while you're being billed for that time? And that time tracking software is critical for that. And I got to tell you, it's neat because even if you are not watching, like I don't micromanage my team that much, but they think I do. They even if I'm not watching, because I've got that software in place, they think I'm watching, and that's good because it keeps them on task and it keeps them honest. And Jennifer Bruns was asking, what is SEO? So SEO is search engine optimization. This is a skill that's necessary and a strategy that's necessary to get your website highly ranked on the search engines. So very, very important stuff. It's something that you definitely want to have working for you. And is an executive virtual assistant the same as project? Not entirely. You could have a project that would be done by an executive assistant, but generally speaking, when people hire the executive assistant virtual assistants, they're hiring them on a longer-term basis. And Janet O'Brien asked a great question. What about confidentiality and protecting intellectual property? Again, that agreement that you fill out between you and I mirrors the agreement that we sign with the virtual assistant. So you're protected because it's got that non-compete, non-disclosure agreement built into it, so that everybody's on notice that your intellectual property is your intellectual property and not anyone else's. Let's see here. Do you recommend to hire a VA to handle sensitive or proprietary business information such as prospect lists, suppliers, and customer lists? And yes, Alan, I do. Here's the thing you got to realize, folks. If you have to do everything yourself, you're never going to get anywhere. You just won't. You're not going to get ahead. You're not going to have the quality of life that you want to have if you have to be the one doing everything. You've got to learn to delegate, and delegation requires trust. So at some level, you're going to have to learn to trust the people on your team. Now, trust is earned. You're going to start off, you're going to give them a little bit of trust here and a little bit of trust there, and you give them more and more items of trust as time goes on. But you need to get to a point where you have people on your team that you can trust with your entire business, and that's very, very important. And, if you're in the healthcare industry, for example, Ann asked the question about HIPAA compliance. And yes, if you're in the healthcare industry, you want to make sure that you're in compliance with HIPAA laws, and you want to make sure your team is as well. Great questions. And yes, again, I have a question from John on the presentation. Yes, I will be providing you with that. We will make sure we email it out to you. So watch your email. It's going to come from Michael Hellickson. You can see my name at the bottom of your screen there. So be on the lookout for emails from me and make sure that it didn't accidentally go into your spam. And I'll make sure I get you this PowerPoint as well as a replay of the webinar. All right, let's see what else we've got. When a VA follows up with someone you met at an event, do you then write them an email as if they're speaking in your voice and with your email signature? Great question, Steve. And a lot of the emails that are sent out from and this depends. Every CEO is different on how they handle this. But a lot of times they'll want the VA to write emails as if it's the CEO talking. I personally don't prefer that. In my business, I don't want anybody speaking in my voice. I want them speaking in their voice. So I'll have them send an email out that says, "Hi, John, this is Susie, Michael's VA. Michael wanted me to get back to you and let you know, blah, 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 blah." And so I always like to throw in that Michael wanted me to get back to you and let you know, because then it still gives that personal touch. It still tells the client that I care about them personally, and yet it's not my VA speaking my voice. Because what if somebody speaks in your voice and they say something that you wouldn't have said, and now you've got to back that up, and you don't even know what was said? I think it's a bit of a slippery slope. I'd be careful with that. And so, all right, great stuff. All right, just a couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap up. And I apologize. I know I'm not getting to everybody's questions. I'm just trying to pick the big ones that I think everybody's going to want to know about. Is the VA exclusively dedicated to me? And John, that's a great question, and it really depends on how many hours per week you're utilizing that virtual assistant. The hours, let's say you hire one for 10 hours a week. Then during those 10 hours a week, or 2 hours per day, 5 days a week, that VA works exclusively for you. If you hire a VA for 40 hours a week, they won't have any other clients, period. We don't allow our VAs to take on more clients than 40 hours a week unless one of their existing clients, so let's say that you have the VA for 40 hours a week and you and the VA are both okay with them working a 50-hour week, that would be okay. In no instance would we ever allow them to work more than a 50-hour week even for one client. But if you hired a VA for 40 hours a week, I would not allow that VA to go work for another client for 10 hours a week in addition to your 40. So great questions. I really appreciate these good questions. Okay, let's see. Do they work specified hours, or do they just complete the job and get paid by the hour? Tom, that's a great question. This is from Tom Hennigan. And Tom, yes, we do require them to work specific hours. We've done it the other way. We've experienced that, and I'll tell you, don't make that mistake. Never, ever, ever let someone get it done on their schedule. They have to get it done on your schedule. This allows you to have complete control of the process. You can set expectations. They know what needs to be done and when it needs to be done, and you have a better relationship and a better quality of output than you will in any other way. If you just let them do it on their schedule, it never becomes a priority. It doesn't get done when you think it's supposed to get done, and there's tension, and you'll have problems with your VA. And what if I just need a VA for a few hours a week? Well, that's another one from Tom, and that's a great question. You can use them for as little as 2.5 hours a week, Tom. And during the 1-week trial, how can we monitor the VA to make sure work is getting done? Same thing, you've got that time, and that's for Terrell Jackson. Thank you for the question, Terrell. You can use that same time tracking software during that first week free trial that we're going to give you, and you can see right on there what work they're getting done and whether or not they're doing the work the way you want it and in the time frame you want them. Sandy Mitchell says, fantastic session. Thank you so much for the information. I never thought about hiring a VA, and this is the perfect time to consider it. Thank you for that, Sandy. I appreciate your great comment there. And David, do you want to jump in with anything, or do you want me to keep going on a couple more questions here before we wrap up?
No, if you want to try to finish up the questions before we wrap up, I really appreciate you taking the extra time. I know we went over, and it was because I kept asking you questions and interrupting you. Thank you.
Oh, no worries. I think it's been very helpful. I think your questions have been particularly poignant and really helpful to everybody on the call. Are we allowed to offer incentives and bonuses for results? Terrell asked that question. Terrell, that's a great question, and the reality is you are allowed to do that. We would like for those to go through us so that we can keep track of what's happening there. I will say this, however. Generally speaking, you don't get the bang for your buck with incentives and bonuses with a virtual assistant that you do with a U.S. employee. Virtual assistants in most parts of the world are motivated very differently than people from the U.S. They want security. They want to know that they can support their family and that they've got consistent income coming in. And consistency is far more important and valuable to them than upside potential of bonuses and that sort of thing. And that's not always the case, but I will say it's more often than not that's the case. So, gosh, great stuff. Do you recommend a VA to hire sensitive and private information, business suppliers, prospects list? Yeah, we covered that one, I believe. And let's see, I'll get to one more question, and I'm going to let you all go. Here's a good one. I am the owner of an SEM company and finding that outsourcing is a huge benefit for all the reasons you mentioned. What are the best methods for hiring a personal virtual assistant with confidentiality, financial information, for example, bookkeeper, they're going to have all your financial information, that sort of thing. I desperately want to add or hand off tons of things and wants to know how to do this with this type of virtual assistant. Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, there's the first thing you got to do is you got to make sure that hiring process, that vetting and testing process is so critical, and you've got to take the time to do that properly. That being said, and I say this honestly not out of selfish reasons, but because I truly believe it's the right way to go. Hiring a company like ours to do that search, particularly for those positions that are of high value, that are positions where you're going to have sensitive information, where you need to ensure that you're not going to be hiring somebody that's going to become a problem. I really do recommend engaging the services of a headhunting agency like ours, because chances are, in a position like that, the person that we give you is probably someone that we already have experience with. In other words, we've had them either working on our team or working with our clients' teams, and we know that they are or are not reliable and trustworthy, and or we wouldn't be placing them with you in that position. So we've managed to test them out even further than just the standard process, particularly in those sensitive positions. So anyway, great questions, everybody, and I really do appreciate all of you. I see we've just got tons and tons of people still on our call now, and thank you so very, very much for that. Do go to growthink.com/VA. Again, that's growthink.com/VA. And even if you're not ready to hire a VA quite yet, connect with us. Reach out to us. And what we'll do is we'll stay in contact with you. We'll answer all your questions. We'll give you a free half-hour session with one of our consultants to ensure that you're getting all of your questions answered. And in the meantime, again, I just got to thank you, Dave, for putting this webinar together today and for making this possible for all of us. So thank you so very, very much.
My pleasure, Michael. I'd like to thank everyone who attended the webinar. And Michael, thanks to you. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day and going over to answer all these questions. I got some great notes myself. And bottom line for me, and just, I'm an entrepreneur like everyone else on the webinar here, is that to grow my business, I'm still being an assistant, per your quote. If you don't have an assistant, you are one. While I have many assistants, I'm still doing a lot of things that I should be doing. There's still a lot of things that I'd like to be able to move faster on, save money on, and so I'm going to be talking to you as well about getting your team, Michael, to help me as well and get some more virtual assistants here. So this has been eye-opening and very, very helpful. So thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up our webinar. So everyone, thank you so much. And again, we will send out a replay link as well as the PowerPoint slides so that everybody's got those. And again, to connect with us, just go to growthink.com/VA. And that is being said, everyone have a wonderful, wonderful day. And remember, you are world class.